Hey, good morning. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. This morning, I'm very pleased to have with me as my guest Laurie McNamara, who's a partner at Wilson Sonsini. Laurie, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Richard. I'm really happy to be here today.
Now, Laurie, you have one of the more unusual backgrounds I come across, at least among lawyers. You have a PhD in biochemistry in addition to everything else you've done. But maybe you can just start by telling me your original interest in your career goals when you went into science.
Yeah, sure. So I think, from like a very early age, I kind of knew I wanted to be in science.
Hmm.
It's literally as far back as I can remember that it was like what I wanted to do, almost like a calling. Excuse the pun, but I think it was encoded in my DNA that I was meant to be in science. So, um, it was sort of odd because, I didn't really know any scientists growing up.
Huh.
Nobody in my family was a scientist.
Oh, really?
I came from a pretty typical Irish Catholic family where people were cops and firemen or teachers. My grandfather had a family business in Jersey City, a small real estate business that he started with his brothers. And eventually my father took it over along with his cousins. And the business was started in 1936
Huh.
and it went all the way to 2018. And I think there's a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit that runs in my family. But we sort of like to joke that, I'm still kind of in property, so to speak, that I'm in IP law, but I think kind of that entrepreneurial spirit is important in my patent practice.
Huh.
But in terms of science, I knew from a super early age that I wanted to be in this business.
Huh.
And it goes as far back as when I was in sixth grade, I had a teacher that had like a science club before school. And so it was literally at 7:30 in the morning before school started that I was running experiments before school started at 8:30. And my parents supported this. They like, okay, and in fact, I was talking with my mom earlier today because my son, he looks a lot like my husband, but she said he's a lot like you personality wise. And she said what I see about him is it's kind of like the brain is always going, and I
Hmm.
think for me, the scientific mindset is about having a natural curiosity about things, keeping a sense of wonder about the natural world and just wanting to understand how things
Huh.
work.
Huh. How
And
did you
so,
how did you choose the area of science you were going to go into? I mean, obviously, science is a broad thing. How did you choose chemistry?
yeah. So I think kind of, I'm a product of the public school system in New Jersey. I had fantastic teachers,
Hmm.
and I um, I had a wonderful chemistry teacher
Hmm.
my sophomore year of high school, and I just knew that's what I wanted to major in. It was done. Like I liked biology as well,
Yeah.
but I knew I wanted to be a chemistry major.
Huh.
And so I also really liked my writing classes and English and literature and all
Huh.
that. And
Huh.
so I just knew though out of high school when I was deciding what I wanted to do for college that I was going to be a chemistry major. And but because I had this interest in writing as well, I wanted to go to a liberal arts school,
Hmm.
which is how I ended up at Hope College in West Michigan. Now,
Hmm.
West Michigan is a lot different from North Jersey.
Yeah, I'll bet.
But it was, kind of one of the best decisions I ever made was going to Hope College. And I
Huh.
have a strong family connection with Hope College because my brother went there. My aunt and uncle also went there. It's a Christian school. So my uncle was in seminary and then he went on to do his PhD in sociology and then was on the faculty of Hope College for many, many years. And sort of my uncle was the first person I ever knew that had a PhD.
Hmm.
But being at Hope, they have a very strong chemistry program. It's nationally recognized.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of it has to do with the connections with the pharma industry also in Michigan. Pharmacia used to be in Kalamazoo, but then Dow Chemical. A lot of my classmates, their parents worked at Dow Chemical in Midland, Michigan. So it was a great experience being able to be at Hope and also do a lot of undergraduate research. And so they had a lot of NSF grants
Hmm.
for undergraduates to be able to do research and the
Hmm. Hmm.
like. And so Early on, I was able to do, these projects with my organic chemistry professor, where we were collaborating with the biology department to do natural products isolation of these seeds from Costa Rica to try to
Hmm.
figure out why these seeds persisted in the rainforest. So it's natural products isolation, mass spec, and all that. And it
Hmm.
actually ended up being, with my colleagues, one of my first peer-reviewed papers. So that was super exciting.
I was just gonna say, did you know that you were gonna go get a PhD when you were in college, or did you think is that something that you kind of decided to do at when you were getting close to graduation?
Yeah, so at Hope College, it's very much encouraged to go on and get PhDs.
Mm.
So my brother was in econ. He also went on to get a PhD in
Yeah.
economics. It's just part of the culture at Hope College to do research and then to go on and get a PhD. And for me, growing up in Jersey, the pharmaceutical industry is ever present, right? I grew up 10 minutes from Hoffman LaRoche in Nutley, New Jersey. There's Merck Research Labs there, J&J, Shearing Plow, all of them, right? So I kind of knew that in order to run a lab, I needed to have a PhD.
Mhm. Mm.
And so that led me to Northwestern, where I did my PhD. And it was only 3 hours from West Michigan, where I was. So I was still close to my family.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I ended up going there.
Now, how did you decide on choosing a PhD thesis topic that you ended up choosing?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody will tell you, I think doing research at the bench, right? It can be a humbling experience. So a lot of times you go in with like one thought of like, this is what I'm going to study.
Mm.
Then you do experiments and you're just not getting good results, or the experiments aren't working out. So it's a lot of trial and error, and you can move through different projects. And honestly, it's like what ends up working, that you get good data and a good story around that you can then publish a paper on, or publish more than one paper to then write a thesis about. But kind of one of the things you have to decide early on, of course, right? So I was doing things more on the chemistry end, right? Doing some medicinal chemistry type work. And I ended up pivoting into structural biology,
Hmm.
which is a bit different. And part of that was our proximity to Argonne National Labs,
Hmm.
which is just outside Chicago, where we had access to this facility to do data collection, to do X-ray crystallography and get crystal structures of proteins. And so a lot of what I studied was protein small molecule interactions and drug design,
Hmm.
which I was just endlessly fascinated by, and
Mhm.
just had a wonderful experience there.
So when you were getting your PhD, what were your career goals at the time? Were you planning on going to the pharmaceutical industry? Were you thinking about becoming a teacher, a professor? What was your career goal?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times professors, your PhD advisor, right? Because you're their student, and they
Yeah.
kind of want you to be going into doing academic research. But it started to become more acceptable to be open about, I want to go into industry, and that's what I wanted to do.
Mm.
Hope College also had a connection to Merck Research Lab, so I was able to have research experiences at Merck in New Jersey. My goal was to be able to go back to the pharmaceutical industry to run a lab. But things started to change in the mid 2000s. For example, it was while I was in graduate school, it was a lot harder to get research grants
Mm.
funded.
Mm.
And it became more and more common that you had to do a postdoctoral fellowship after the PhD,
Oh, wow.
right? And that could be something like another 3 years of study. Some people do multiple postdocs,
Wow.
right? And I finished my PhD at the end of 2008. I formally defended at the beginning of 2009. So that was like not a great time to be looking for a job.
Mm.
Um, and so I started to think about alternative careers,
Oh, interesting.
which kind of led me to patent law.
Well, how did the idea get planted? Did someone suggest it? Did you stumble onto it? How did that happen?
The first time I heard about the career was at Hope College, where we had like Friday seminar series about
Oh,
careers in science. That was the first time I had ever heard of a patent attorney, or that this is a potential career option.
yeah.
But still at undergrad, I wanted to be doing research and such. And then when I was in graduate school, because of the nature of the work that we were doing, we were designing small molecule inhibitors, right, for
Right.
inhibiting different proteins to create drugs. We had to consider the patent literature in our research plans, right?
Mm.
So that was also kind of my first exposure to patents. and thinking about this is, potential career option, maybe if I didn't want to be at the lab bench anymore.
Hmm.
But I have to say, it was a hard conversation to have with my PhD advisor and some of the committee members at the end, as far as like, are you sure you want to go into patent law? Because of course that's not even being like the head of a research lab in industry,
Right.
right? Let
Right.
alone running an academic lab. This is like different. And they're like, that just seems so boring, And I think there's a little bit of a leap of faith that goes on. But I have to say, that comment was so inaccurate because nothing is farther from the truth as far as what my day-to-day job is. It's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
interesting, and I come
Yeah.
across so many interesting people and problems every day.
Yeah. I'll
But yeah,
bet.
I mean, I think it's a little bit of a leap of faith to make that transition from the lab bench into law. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
part of my encouragement was from my older sister, who's she was in law school at the same time I was doing graduate school, and
Oh.
she's a litigator in New York. And she's like, I talked to her, I'm like, maybe I could do the patent agent path, which is a viable career path as well, right? And she said, Lori, just do it. You'll have so many more opportunities if you go to law school. And the way that I saw it was, 3 years of law school is kind of the same length of time as a postdoc, but I'll hopefully come out with better job options. And so I did it, and I haven't looked back.
Yeah, interesting. So you went straight from your PhD right to law school. Did you even work then as a biochemist in industry at all, or you just went
Not
straight to
really.
law school?
No, I didn't. I
Yeah.
finished my PhD and then started the path down
Wow.
the road
Law school. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
for law school. I
Yeah.
applied to law school. I was fortunate, um, to get a scholarship, and that was very consequential for me because that sort of de-risked the whole move,
Yeah.
to have a
Right.
scholarship to go to law school instead of taking out loans. And then I was fortunate at the law school I went to. I met a lot of classmates, who also had PhDs, and I was able to get a job at a firm in San Diego. So then I did law school part-time
Mm,
while I was
mm, mm,
working
mm,
full-time as a
mm,
patent agent to sort of
mm.
get the legal experience before becoming a patent attorney.
Yeah,
So
that's so cool. How did you like law school? Because I know, for scientists, it's always a very different experience, or what did it feel very natural to you?
yeah, I loved it. I mean, I think I just kind of, I've always loved school. Obviously, if I went to school this long, I've always just liked
That's
learning.
true. That's true. That's true. Yeah.
But I, because when I was at Hope, I did take my humanities classes, but obviously it was very heavy in chemistry and
Yeah.
biology, and
Right.
then through graduate school, of course. And I just love being able to take business law, accounting, right? All these things I didn't know anything about. And I really enjoyed law school. And I think what I love about law, of course, is the logic. It's very formulaic, on how we write and how we analyze things. And so, it was a good fit for me for sure.
So what kind of technologies do you get to do now as a patent lawyer? I assume it's mostly in the areas you studied, or maybe it's not.
It is. Yeah, I have to say, I tend to not deviate too much from kind of what my core technical expertise was in,
Yeah,
which is in drug discovery and drug development. So I work with a lot of therapeutics companies.
I'll bet.
And because I have this background in structural biology, entomology, I tend to work with companies that are developing biologics, therapeutics, so
Mm.
antibody therapies. I also work in the siRNA space as well. So yeah, it's been a really good fit for me, as far as kind of what my technical background is. There's a need for it kind of in the marketplace for what clients are doing and companies are doing. So I don't go too much beyond kind of therapeutics companies. I do some diagnostics work, but it's very much in the biology space.
So when you look back on your career, are you happy with your decision that you decided to become a patent lawyer instead of a scientist?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certain things about science I miss. I
Uh-huh.
mean, those days in the cold room, I miss working with my hands. I mean, I did like that aspect. But it's the being in science can be a long, hard road and a lonely experience. Science is an incredibly humbling type of job to be in when your experiments aren't working, right? And that can be tough. It can
Yeah.
feel a little bit isolating. And so I'm really glad I made the switch to law because I just get to interact with a lot of people on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I still get to be very close to the science and working with scientists and the like. So.
Yeah. Well, Laurie, this has been a fascinating conversation. As a former engineer who also became a lawyer, I love hearing stories of other scientists, and congratulations on all your success and taking the time to share your story with me.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Appreciate it.
This is Richard Hsu and Laurie McNamara. Thanks.